What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Andrew Roman Show. How's everyone doing right now? Hey, I hope that you're doing well. If you're listening, if you're watching, whatever it is, man, thank you so much. I can't tell you thank you enough for listening. I think we did our 2020 recap. I mentioned this probably last episode, actually. And man, people are listening from like 4 different countries. We have over 1,400 listens already on podcasts. It hasn't been a year yet. I'm super proud of just everything that you and we've accomplished, man, because I could not do this without you. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that your December is going well. Guys, 2020 is almost over, but we've been through it. We've been through it all. You know, it's crazy because I started this podcast I would say somewhat before the it was before the lockdowns. I mean, it was in the beginning of March, and sure, we were kind of hearing some theories out there, but it was before the lockdowns. And then I remember the lockdowns happened, and then that's when I did some episodes still in the studio. Do you remember that studio? Man, you have to watch maybe the first 10 episodes, first 5 or 6 episodes. We're back in the studio. It was a pretty fancy studio. And then I was moved to my room as we are right now. But I've had a couple different setups even in my room. So if you're an OG, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But man, what a year that we've been through together. I was actually scrolling through all the episodes that we've recorded. It's been about 46 now. We're coming to the centennial. Is that right? I feel fancy using some Roman numeral terms. So I believe it's a centennial's 50 years, not 50 years, but 50 episodes that we're coming into pretty soon. And then, man, it's going to be when we're done, which is 53, I guess 52 weeks is a year. It's going to be in March. Can you believe it? So we've been through a lot. I remember doing an episode about how to make your quarantine not suck, right? Corona communication, how to connect better with people during the coronavirus. And we've been through a lot, but this episode, I really want to welcome everybody who's listening. Don't forget that if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button, just hit a bunch of buttons. The only button don't hit is a down like, the dislike. I mean, if you really dislike it, sure. But I encourage you to like it. That way more people can see it. If you're on podcast, hit the follow button and leave me a 5-star review if you like this podcast. Well, I want to dive right into it. I got a cool mug, so I tried something fancy this time. If you're watching on YouTube, check this out. I actually have something inside my mug. That never happens. I usually just display it, but I was actually talking the day that I'm recording this episode. I was just talking with one of my friends, and they told me they're like, dude, you should actually put something and you're going to need something in your mug. So I did it. Congratulations. Let me sip it. If you're watching it, if you're listening to the audio, you can hear me sip my tea. Extra emphasis for exaggeration there. So this is hilarious. I hope that you find this hilarious. So I'm not a tea person and I'm more of a coffee guy, but I thought that when I feel like when you say I'm going to drink some tea, it's kind of bougie. It's kind of like, wow, this guy drinks tea. And especially I didn't want some coffee. I just wanted some fresh tea. So I went over to the drawer. I still live at home. So my mom has all these tea bags. Again, I'm not a tea concierge. I have no idea really anything about teas besides like black tea or green tea. All I know about teas is that you grab a little package, you put some hot water, some boiling water, and you throw the package in. Like that's it. Like that's tea. Well, I thought I was doing something wrong because that tea that I'm drinking right now tastes like hot water with maybe a hint of cinnamon, but like it don't taste like tea. I mean, this thing literally just tastes like hot water with a hint of cinnamon. So I went with my mom. I was like, what the heck did I do wrong? So apparently there are different type of tea bags. Apparently not every tea bag is a full flavor. Apparently this is just an enhancement if making like ciders or something like that. So yeah, now I know to be a little bit more specific with my tea. So that's my tea story. I got a cool mug here. It's the Alamo. I got this when I was in San Antonio several years ago, maybe probably about 7 years ago. Is one of my first mugs in my collection. So now you know. Well, this episode is titled What I Learned from 2020 or What 2020 Taught Me. This is interesting because I was sharing the idea with somebody and he pointed out that that's an interesting title. because some people could say, man, you learned anything in 2020? This has been like a trash year, man. Get us out of here, 2021. You can't come fast enough, right? But I really believe, and I mean it seriously, when I was thinking just about this episode and just praying about it, saying, God, it's a lot of times in the hard moments when we learn the most. It's the hard moments when we learn the most. And I say that because a lot of times when things are good and all that, we can be so complacent of where we are because it feels good and we're at a high note, if you will, or we are in a good moment of life and in a mountaintop that we feel like, I don't really need to learn anything. I made it. But whenever we're in the valley, whenever we are in the hard spot, whenever we're in the dip, and whenever we're there, it's the moments like those that we can learn the most. And hasn't 2020 been a whole dip for a lot of the majority of the time? It's truly been a dip. But I do believe that there are good things in the dip. I do believe that God makes something beautiful out of something broken and something just that you think it's trash, right? As they say, someone's trash is somebody else's treasure. And I do believe that some of the trash that this 2020 might have been for you or for me, God can make a treasure out of it. So I wanted to talk about some lessons and what I believe 2020 has taught me. And the first thing that I think you and I can relate is that life is fragile. Gosh, did we not learn that this year? And life is fragile. Things that we thought were consistent, or if not permanent, or at least reliable, like work or like school or like being able to at least go hang out with your friends or travel or things like that, all of a sudden in a matter of a week, they're gone. And I don't think I'm the only one to say, holy cow, did that disappear so quickly? Even when I thought, hey, this happened to a lot of work, and I was blessed enough to still have my job. And even though it got really slow, I work in real estate investment, so it got really slow for about 2 months there, but God was so faithful. But think about your own life. What were things that completely disappeared? It could have been your job. It could have been your school, right? Universities closed down. Universities then went online. It wasn't the same thing. And then you couldn't go back to campus, or for some, you could go back to campus, but then you couldn't really go back into the classroom because then there were too many students, or it was a hybrid mode, and it just wasn't the same. Life is fragile. I was talking with a friend the other day, and we were just talking about the how amazing and how incredible the human body is and how God made us. We're talking about sound waves. Even right now, wherever you're listening, if you have your headphones on, then you're being what you're doing is you're highlighting, or you're focusing on the sound waves of my voice, right? And if you just have me on speaker, there's so many sounds around you, so many sound waves, but your mind knows how to prioritize, right? Of what you give focus to, and some sounds there's more used to them than others. And now the reason I say all this is because it's not only with the sound waves. I mean, the human capacity of what we've done. Think about it. We've gone to the moon. We've said, discovered so many cures and things. And one could think, wow, aren't we amazing? A humanist perspective could be, oh my gosh, we're the top of the world, we're the top of the universe. Yet you can be the strongest man and twist your ankle and you're done. Right? I mean, we could have so many cures, but there's still things that we don't totally get. You can be the richest man in the world, be in an accident, and you're gone the next day, and all your wealth doesn't go with you. We've done so many things, but life is inherently fragile. Dr. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this in his book, and 12 Rules for Life, and it's a very thought-provoking book. I don't agree with everything that he writes, but it's at least very thought-provoking, makes you think. And, he says that there's a component of life that is somewhat suffering. He puts it pretty dramatically, but I would just, in my own version, say life is fragile. And what it taught me is that the only thing constant in our lives is God. The only thing constant that never changes is God's character. People's character. I mean, think about this year. You thought you had a job, gone. You thought you had school, gone. You thought you had friends and all that. This year has been extremely divisive for many people, whether it be about racial things or about politics or whatever it is. I mean, maybe you've lost a friendship. Maybe whatever it might be, you've lost something this year. But the good news is that God's character never changes. And that's the one thing. So what I've learned about 2020 is that although life is fragile, God is not. God is not fragile. His love is not fragile. His faithfulness is not fragile. We have to learn to mark the moments, because the second thing that I've learned so much about this year is that so much time can feel like it went, like so much time can feel like it has happened. However, we haven't even finished the year. Doesn't it feel like it's been a whole decade? You know, there's the famous, I don't know if it was a TikTok or a meme about, it's like God with Angel Gabriel, right? And they're like, hey, Gabriel, did you spread out the different, big events throughout the decade of 2020? And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, throughout the decade? I thought you wanted me to put them in 1 year, and it's like, God's like, wait a second. Did you just put 10 years worth of events in crisis in 1 year? And they're like, yeah, that kind of happened, right? I mean, it feels like we've lived a lifetime in this year, but it's even in those times that it feels like we've lived a lifetime that we can be so quick to just want to throw away 2020 and think about 2021, which there's so much good in 2020, because you see the low moments, the deep moments is when you can see the mountain the best. When you're in the valley, you can see you're at the very bottom and you can see the mountain, and it's when you can see its size, right? You can see the giganticness that it is. And what I mean to say about that is that suffering many times can be a magnifying glass to the goodness of God in that situation. Now, it always surprises me, people who suffer, who have gone through some terrible things and suffered some terrible things, they can still praise God and say that He is good because He never changes. And that's what I've learned in this year, is that although life is fragile, God is not fragile. Although this year has gone, it feels like it's been forever, but we're not even done yet. That we have to make sure to mark the moments of God's faithfulness. I can't tell you personally how many times God has been faithful with work, with my health. I got COVID. I recovered. I know people who have been healed. I know there has been some crazy good things that have happened this year. I'm sure there's been more church attendance that there has ever been because of online. So yes, you can focus on the darkness, but at the same time, as I mentioned it a couple episodes ago, it's at the darkest point in the night when the sunrise starts to happen, right? So there's always this beauty even amidst the darkness, and there's always a rose even amidst the thorns. And I want to encourage you, don't throw away 2020 as just a trash year. Mark the moments of God's faithfulness. Mark the moments. Use that magnifying glass this year and think back. You're alive right now. You're listening to my voice. That means that you have breath in your lungs. That's something to be thankful for. Maybe you have a job where you still were able to go to school, even if it might be online. Be thankful for that. You have a home, you have friends, you have family that love you. You have the chance to celebrate Christmas. I mean, there's so many things to be thankful for that this world just wants to say. We as believers, we cannot take the same perspective on 2020 that unbelievers have, because unbelievers don't have the hope that we have in Jesus. For them, everything changes and nothing is constant. But for us, Jesus is constant. Hebrews 13 verse 8 says that Jesus never changes. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And for that reason, I can trust Him. I can place my faith on Him. You see, it's so interesting because it's as if we're embarking on a ship that has hit the storm of 2020, and everyone's wanting something to hold on to. They want to hold on to the ship, right? But unfortunately, the ship, if it ain't Jesus, it's going to sink. As the Bible calls it, Jesus is the anchor of my soul. So if you're not holding on to Jesus, can I break the news to you? Your world will fall apart. I have this little, I've mentioned it before, I have a little, like a book stopper, if you will, that goes on my desk, and it says, if your Bible is falling apart, there's a good chance that your world is holding together. And couldn't that be more true even in times like this? Remember, I did an episode where I talked about Psalm 23. That's even in the valley of the shadow and death. That is not about God taking you away from the valley of shadow and death. It's that He is with you. It's not about avoiding hard times. It's going through hard times, because you're not going to stay there. You're going through it. And, some other things that I've learned about 2020. So to recap, is life is fragile. God is the only thing constant in our lives. And if he is not your foundation, right now as I'm talking, it comes to mind Jesus' parable about the man who builds the house on the sand or on the rock. And as I give that, let me drink my hot water with a hint of cinnamon. Holy cow, this is bad. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. It really is just like warm water right now. I'm probably not going to drink that again. Hey, next episode, I'm going to have a good tea or a good coffee, okay? And we can talk about it. But for now, this is trash. This is like 2020. So as I was saying, what was I saying actually? Oh yeah, we were talking about, Psalm 23 and everything. And to recap, life is fragile. If you're not holding on to God, if you're not building your house on the rock, it's going to fall apart. The wind and the waves will crash. Job is not your foundation. Work is not your foundation. Friendships are not your foundation. Fame, popularity, money, Instagram, social media, those are not your foundations. If they are sand. I'm sorry to break it to you. They are sand, and they will dissolve with a little bit of water. It's all gone. Have you built a sandcastle before? Yeah, when the waves come, it gone. Unless you're real good. At some point, though, the waves will catch up to your sandcastle and it's going to disappear. So this year, as we go into 2021, I'm going to do another episode as well, just to review God's faithfulness and a good mindset to go into 2021. And I'll mention it a little bit right now, is that don't rely on 2021 to be better than 2020. Why would we think that? I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist, but why would we think that they're like somehow we're just hoping that 2021 is going to be like a magical year, right? Like with zero problems. Nah, who the heck knows what 2021 is going to have? I have no idea. Corona might still be here. I'm just saying, Corona might still be here. But guess what we can look forward to is God's faithfulness and his goodness in 2021, because God can do some crazy things even in the middle of a crisis, even in the middle of a pandemic, even in the middle of a fear-demic. Okay, I had to say that. Yes, even in the middle of anything God can do, in the middle of the impossibility, he can make that and turn it into a possibility. Remember, God is the God of the impossible. Some other things that come to mind that 2020 has taught me is how childish, and this might be a total switch from what we're talking about, but how childish we have become as a society. Holy God, we can't think for ourselves, guys. Think about the news. The power of the news, of the media, of social media is absolutely crazy right now, where people are just echoes. No one's an original voice right now. Everyone's just retweeting things because they don't know what to tweet for themselves, or everyone's just quoting what their influencer said, but no one can actually think for themselves. And I'm making a generalization. There are plenty of people who can, but I think you get my point. And I say this because, I read this thing the other day. This is so true. The government right now has taken such a parental role in society that it provides almost for everything, that it says when the government acts as a parent, the citizens will act like children. Isn't that true this year? Really, when it comes to, gosh, I can think about different scenarios. Even take COVID. Again, I've had COVID. I know people. I know stories of people who have passed away with COVID. It's a serious thing that we cannot take lightly at all. We can't take lightly. And we also at the same time have to be reasonable. You have the government, especially God bless Texas, where I can actually go out to a restaurant. But then you have like Governor Newsom in California, like shutting down Thanksgiving, or just putting huge restrictions on it. Where like, oh, it's a 2-hour time limit. Yeah, like, is COVID like gonna attack in like 2 hours and 1 minute? There's just so many things that we have to start thinking for ourselves. We can't be like children. We have to be like adults. And when 2021 comes, guys, I can just tell you, it's going to be a rough year for anyone who allows other people in the culture to think for them. We have to think for ourselves. And by that, I don't mean in our own wisdom. We have to have the wisdom and the perspective of the Bible. And that's part of thinking critically, right? So I want to encourage you that this new year that comes in, whatever the heck it might bring, is that you stick with God's perspective. Because this year we went through politics, we went through race issues, we went through a bunch of stuff. Next year, who in the world knows what we're going to go through? But here's the good news. God's word, God's character always stays consistent. You can be a consistent person. You can be a tree like Jeremiah chapter 17 says, that a tree that always bears fruit, that does not fear when the heat comes, because it will always bear fruit. So my question to you is this: are you relying on God, or are you relying on life? Because life is fragile. Life will fall apart at some point. But not to sound too pessimistic, right? But God won't ever. God won't ever fall apart. He is the rock. He is not the sand. So my question is, on which foundation will you build your life on? We'll see you in the next episode of The Andrew Ramon Show.